Welcome to the jump off point. I am Sly.
I am slightly wet spook.
We have just finished watching The Shape of Water, a movie by Guillermo del Toro, I believe his name is.
Yeah, something like
Yeah, so I don't want to preempt this review at all. So, Spook, what did you think of The Shape of Shit?
that. Where were the Wonder Twins?
Form of shit.
Look,
Wasn't offensive.
no, I was going to start with
That's a good place to start.
there's a point where I guess you can applaud people for trying something different. Whether the execution equals the trying, that's probably that point where I'm at now. Where, yeah, look, I wasn't greatly offended by the film. I wasn't greatly entertained by the movie either.
I remember when we were talking about this movie, about seeing it, you said it sounded like
Shit.
Swamp Creature Black Lagoon.
Well, yeah, Creature from the Black Lagoon.
It basically like your B grade horror movie, and this is actually a sort of problem I think with a lot of modern Hollywood. You take a B grade horror movie, you apply A grade treatment of great director, great actors, competent script, and you still have a B grade horror movie. And that's what this was. This was still a B grade horror movie.
I think it was even really a horror film.
Well, not horror, but it was that sort of B grade, schlock film, I guess. Not horror, but schlock. And in terms of like watching, I thought it was really well made. I thought Sally Hawkins was great. I thought Octavia Spencer was really good, playing the same role she's played in the last three movies I've seen her in. Michael Shannon was really good as Michael Shannon.
He made it through the film without having his neck snapped.
No, well, that's always a positive. Richard Jenkins, always great. But in watching it, it was like, geez, I'm not really getting taken in by this. And the big problem for me was the setup. If you look at the first act of the movie, the premise of the movie is she is a janitor who has no vocal cords because her neck was slashed when she was young.
She also has no problem accessing restricted areas.
Yeah, yep, I was going to get to that. And she meets a lizard that the government has taken into a secret facility, and they develop a relationship. The lizard comes to trust her, and it goes forbidden places, and they blink. Before they jump to the water. The first 30 minutes, it was funny how many times we pointed out the things the movie's introducing would be foreshadowing stuff that would come up later.
Yeah.
She had scars on her neck, you picked they're going to be gills. The sign language, because she couldn't speak, was like, oh, geez, is that the way she could communicate with the monster? There was all this sort of setting up of things that were going to happen. And that's fine, but it was very obtrusive. And then I think the thing that I really, not going to offend me or anything greatly, but in terms of trying to get invested in the film that didn't work, is the first time she really wanted to go connect to the monster. Secure government facility, and she just walks in and gives him an egg. Because that's how government grabs a monster. And this is what I said, you go to a B grade premise, and you treat it like a B grade premise, you're going to get a B grade investment. And that's okay, that's not going to work. You need it to be a little bit more clever than that to really get people interested in it. Or, as far as I was concerned, in terms of I was just looking at it, that would never happen. You ask me to buy into this premise, I can't buy into it. Because I just can't believe she would walk into a secure facility where it's all keycard access and all this, high security shit, and she just goes in and
spends as much time in there as she needs to.
Yeah, and gives him an egg. and she shows no fear. She just goes up to the lizard. And later on, she talks about how she's an outsider. Well, she doesn't talk about it because she can't speak, but she intimates that she's an outsider and all that. And there's meant to be that empathy there, but I never got that from her either. And there's a funny thing that they played on where she, when I was checking in for work, several times, I think it was twice, well, not several, but twice, she came late and her friend just jumped the line and clock in. And it was like, you're not really getting across to me that this woman is oppressed, that she's struggling in life even though she has no vocal cords. She seems to be pretty, well rewarded. She's living with I don't know what the relationship was there, but she was
best friend. I think it was referred to.
He was gay. I just mentioned that because so they had a platonic relationship. He had a few cats and Dim Sims.
Snacks.
Yes. He was an artist for advertising. It's just sort of like you're trying to sort of say, I find a common spirit in this lizard or this swamp creature or whatever, and that's why we have a connection. But it's like I'm not really getting that you're very much ostracized from society. I'm more ostracized from society because I watch shit movies, and you are by being in them and all that. That to me, like once all that sort of first half an hour has happened, the structure of it or the establishment was like, I'm not buying into this. I can't buy into this. She's just walk in a secure facility and have as much time as she wants, giving him eggs and teaching him sign language. That to me was like, well, I can't buy it. I'm sorry. I don't believe you can establish all these protocols. You know, Michael Shannon is super badass and all that sort of stuff, and I'm going to believe that, hey, you can just fucking walk in there and jump a lizard. And that to me was like the major problem. And then there was like a long, I don't know what it was. It was just posturing. It wasn't even like the things were happening. It was just putting people in position. It was proving that Michael Shannon was a badass, that Sally Hawkins was developing a relationship with Doug Jones, or the swamp creature that he played. And just sort of like everyone was moving their pieces. Nothing was really going on other than it was trying to establish that these relationships were developing without any great movement. And then they kidnap him. They liberate the lizard, the swamp creature, and take him home and put him in a bathtub. Because I think Guillermo del Toro watched Splash with Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah and said, that's a documentary of how you treat sea hybrids, yeah.
They come from the Amazon that need salt water.
And you get Michael Shannon playing like this, Michael Shannon character, this intense, manic, psycho, Zod type creature. And he has the pressure of the military over his head saying, hey, find out where these fucking fingers escaped to or how it's escaped.
Because the whole interest from the military was seemingly that they need to put a man in space.
Yeah.
And he was the key to it all.
Because he lives in water.
And the Russians put a dog in orbit, so therefore we have to put a lizard.
Yeah. But and Michael Shannon, like you think, well, surely if you're that methodical, which Michael Shannon, which later on he was, surely he'd just be going, well, these are the people, that had access to him. And I don't give a fuck if he never saw any direct access from the Sally Hawkins character. He knew Sally Hawkins returned his fingers, so he knew Sally Hawkins was fucking in there. Like Michael Shannon's fingers got chewed off by the monster.
And dipped in mustard.
Yeah, dipped in mustard. So surely what you'd be doing is I'm going to check these people, I'm going to interview them, I'm going to fucking check their places of where they live and all. But none of that happened. It was just like really harmless posturing so Sally Hawkins could bomb the creature and they could have passionate lizard loved sex because she used towels to block up the bathroom and they could fill the bathroom with so anyway, and there was a lot of really massively dumb scenes. It's like, why? Just please, if you're sitting there in the audience and you watch this, if you listen to this before you fucking go watch it, seriously, you can't accept stupidity. The lizard, after they've liberated him and he's living with them, he runs off at one stage and Sally Hawkins goes to find him and there's a bloody handprint.
We laughed at that.
On a door jamb.
I don't think it was meant to be funny.
Bloody handprint on a
but there was a sleeping guy in the ticket box office.
Yeah.
And that's, because I often go see films when I sneak past a sleeping ticket driver.
Yes, with lizard monsters. And she just walks into the cinema, which is totally empty, and there's the lizard creature watching a movie. And she takes him back. And the whole premise was, I need to wait until the rains come and they fill the canals and he can swim back to the sea. Rent a fucking car and drive in.
To the beach.
Yes, it's not that hard. And there's a lot of dumb things like that happen. And, I know people go, it's a movie, don't question it. It's like, yeah, okay. It's still, I've got to sit there and say, if I was in this situation, what would I be doing? I'd be renting a car. Yeah, so it's set in the 60s, so you can't get an Uber, get a fucking taxi. I mean, later on,
Or a Cadillac.
the Richard Jenkins character had a van which they used to drive in. So I can't sort of believe just going to sit around with him in the bathtub while he eats the fucking house cats, and she has sex with him. It's like it's that whole it's trying to do. I think that Beauty and the Beast relationship.
I actually thought it. There's a lot of elements in this that parallels ET in terms of. Although I think ET obviously did a lot better because ET took time to build that trust relationship between Elliot and ET, whereas this they bonded over a boiled egg.
Yeah,
pretty quick. Yeah, there's that whole thing about the unknown and you tread lightly. That was sort of pushed aside because I mean, obviously we're meant at the end to think that there's a bond there because she's a fish as well, or potentially a fish. Because getting back to the foreshadowing for a moment. We were told pretty clearly that she was found as an orphan by a lake or a river or something, some form of water, and then pretty much 8 seconds later when you see the scars on her neck that we know that were going to be gills. It's pretty much set up without too much second guessing that's pretty much where it was going to go. I actually thought some of the foreshadowing was so blatantly obvious that there was going to be some sort of, they were red herrings, that there was going to be some sort of flip at the end, but no, it was pretty much as described. That's there for you to see. That's the way it's going to be. That's the way that we ended it. Yeah, another one that I thought was extremely funny was the smoking janitors who pointed out that the cameras,
the blind spots. Yeah,
there's blind spots here. Would you tell me there was a blind spot? Yeah, it was
secure facility.
Yeah, it was all too conveniently set up. Yeah, maybe audiences are exceptionally dumb these days that they actually have to have it spelled out that plainly. But I was a little bit disappointed that there was no sort of duping there that would have made it a little bit more interesting.
Some unreliable narrator where you looked at that and thought, well, that's obviously going to be that, but there's going to be something else. And that's actually just a curious thing, not in relation to this movie, but in storytelling movies in general. I'd like to think that audiences got more intelligent.
I don't think so.
Actually, let me take this back. I actually like to think the screenwriting got a lot more intelligent, and probably one of the pioneers of that, even though it was happening before it, but I think one of the guys that really sort of started driving it home was M. Night Shyamalan, who made Sixth Sense and all that, where he really put in all his stuff, but then he reversed what it meant. Before that, you had it set up, in action movies from ages ago, like Lethal Weapon and where they had foreshadowing. Last Boy Scout did it and all that. But M. Night Shyamalan did that whole, I'm showing you something, but when I reveal it at the end, it's going to mean something else. And it's like now screenwriters are going, okay, we've got to set up everything. But they're not really setting it up in a way where, as you said, it leads to a red herring or anything like that. M. Night Shyamalan does it. No, we did it. But everyone else is going, if this happens in Act 3, then we're going to set this up in Act 1. But it's become so blatant. It's really become such a, wrecking ball in terms of its subtlety or the way they deliver that. And you look at that and just go, geez, that's such a clunky scene. That can only really mean it's going to come back at some later point. And like I said, at the start of this movie, we were picking it. It really was just I wonder if that will come back, later on at some point.
Yeah, there's a bizarre, I suppose, juxtaposition between some of the themes in the film in that respect. There were elements there that, as we discussed, were pretty much set up for a payoff down the track that had no mystery around it. The whole fucking colour thing that was going on in this film perplexed me. The greens just got saturated and more green, and then it transitioned to red. I mean, you've looked up
I gave him my
interpretation of what it is. But it just got too much. There needed to be, I guess, not an explanation, but how much do you walk away from a movie thinking, I watched a film the other day where 70% of it was green and it had some red in it. And do you know how that made me feel the next day? No fucking different.
It's actually interesting. If you watch something like Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, I think it's red. They introduce whenever there's themes of adultery and all that, but it's done really subtly. If you look at something like The Departed by Scorsese, they use X's or crosses on the screen to foreshadow a character's going to die, but it's always done so subtly that you don't. It's not in your face. You really have to be pointed out to you that, look, oh shit, that's going to happen. It's done really well. This was just the green motif was fucking annoying. It got to the point everything was shattered green, and it'll be like splashes of red. I sort of said, I think green was meant to be the status quo and red was meant to be the awakening and shit. That's my guessing. Sometimes I think some filmmakers are getting a little bit too clever with trying to introduce facets to their visual representation to the point where it becomes almost self-defeating of what are you fucking trying to do? Because you're just actually confusing the audience, or you're over-awing them to the point where they're just switching off, going, I don't know what you're trying to fucking show, I don't care anymore. Or I'm trying to work out what you're showing me, and while I'm trying to work it out, I'm totally fucking not paying attention to your story. And we do that a few times. I go, what is all this fucking green trying to tell us, and what's this bits of red? I really thought there's a lot of it wasn't offensive. It wasn't Justice League, Last Jedi, Batman vs Superman, Man of Steel, Force Awakens.
It's
why is J.J. Abrams involved in so many of these movies? Just saying, a lot of these movies it wasn't like that. It was pretty inoffensive. I just think it was way too quick in terms of setting up. I actually thought,
for a film that you could see was going to be, it was a roughly 2-hour running time. You think, the pacing should be slow enough to build something here to a little bit of exploration of these relationships, getting to know each other. It was all pretty much established within, you saw the creature within the first 10 minutes.
Oh, you saw
it. There would have been some
his hand in 2 minutes.
But you saw him in full pretty much. I think, she walked in. Did we see him fully in the tank upright, or was it when he came out of the water?
Came out of the water.
And she had no reason to really go in there so trusting to sit there on the edge. It's like, we sort of thought about, it'd be like going into the shark enclosure or something and saying, look, I've got a raw steak here. I'm going to eat a raw steak for lunch. Shark, you won't jump out of the water and eat this. You just don't know what's in there. There should be a little bit of trepidation in these sorts of things, a little bit of uncertainty. Again, look, I'll go back to E.T., that bit where Elliot sort of, E.T.'s hiding in the backyard in the shed, and Elliot's out there. Yeah. It's beautifully lit. It's a moonlight shot. Spielberg, there's something in there, and I don't know what it is. And he starts throwing the ball in, and it comes back. And there's that sort of moment where there's an element of trust. I don't recall there being a boiled egg being a unifying reason for trust that was ever sort of established. It was a little bit too.
I was too concise in terms.
How many boiled eggs would you come across in the Amazon? Would this thing be eating? That would be the symbol for trusting a human, and vis-a-vis why she would then trust him because she ate a boiled egg. Maybe the boiled egg is a symbol or something.
Something green, maybe. You compare it to E.T. though. E.T. A child has that ability to have that leap of logic and to want to believe in stuff that doesn't. A child can.
This is reality, Greg.
Yeah, child can believe in aliens, ghosts, and all that. So the child can sort of just go.
And you go in there. I'm going to pursue that. The fear factor is low. Yeah.
And as a kid, you want to believe you're going to find stuff like that out, and reveal it to other people. In this, she's an adult, so she has no reason to have that leap of logic
with a restricted life as well, too, or a constrained life.
In terms of the way the story was structured, to me, all the shit that happened after. Did they ever give him a name? The lizard creature, the soft creature?
Yeah, I think it was Gil.
Yeah, Gil. So they never all the stuff that happened once he left the facility. I was watching him going, there's no reason he had to leave the facility to do this other than to eat pussycat. If I was structuring this, the end of the first act would have been her making some meaningful contact with him. The whole second act would have been her developing a relationship with him, her having access to that facility somehow. And she could boink him in that fucking facility and all that. And the end of the second act would have been her freeing him, her, helping him escape. And the whole third act would have been Michael Shannon chasing him and doing what ended up happening. It really felt like there was a lot of establishing of this relationship, building this relationship. And this is also something that's happening fucking modern storytelling, and you said a lot in something like The Last Jedi, is a lot of characters are just put on hold while the other shit's going on. So in this movie, while Sally Hawkins helps free Doug Jones. Sorry, I wish I knew the characters' names, but it just wasn't that interesting. And she brings him back to her apartment, and they develop this relationship. Michael Shannon is just running on the spot. He's saying, "Why am I fucking interviewing the help? I'm just wasting my time." And he's having communications with his own wife. And he's not actually doing anything, and his superior's going, "You better fire this." And nothing actually is really happening in that whole story arc. And he's just waiting until, again, he can be set loose, and then his spirit goes, "You better fucking find this person, you're fucked." And then it's like, okay, now we can move this character forward with his storyline. And to me, you can't be telling stories where one character or whatever, one or two characters are progressing through the story, and everyone else is just put on hold in holding patterns, do fuck all until they're then going, clear for landing, you go for it right now, and then we can move forward. It just really results in a lot of boredom. Last Jedi, sorry, I don't want to go in Last Jedi, but Last Jedi did a lot of it. We're just like, you're all on hold while we try and progress this one storyline. This seems to do quite a bit. This main storyline between Sally Hawkins, Doug Jones, going to progress your relationship, which is sort of silly too, because why are you trying to progress their relationship? You fucking basically summed it up when she gave him an egg, and that was it. It was like, well, they've established this trust. You then montage, we need a montage. You have a montage of their relationship developing and something. Well, it's all happened in 2.5 minutes. So even what you're showing us between them isn't really anything revealing. She boinks him. It's like, well, did we not think that was going to happen? That was always sort of seen the inevitability. So it just really seemed like a lot of stuff was happening that wasn't pushing anything forward.
It's also like the gay artist guy. I really not sure what value he added across the whole thing.
Well, tell me what value did the subplot of the Doctor being a Russian sleeper? That added nothing.
Flagged their interest, I guess, in probably it was always the classic villain in those 60s types films. It was always the Russians who were up to no. That's the only parallel that I could draw from that.
Oh, no, that's that's obviously what he was going for, but it actually accomplished nothing in terms of the story because he just snubbed him. He goes, "I'm not going to tell you anything," and that was it. That was the end of it. And they shot him, and that was it.
Just getting back to the gay artist guy, I can't remember his name.
Richard Jenkins, the real name.
Yeah, but I don't know what was the character's name. It's Frank. For Frank's sake. But the only sort of moment that he really had of relevance to me was when he said, "I'm alone," and to the fish to gill, "You're alone." That was the only sort of moment of connection that was just pretty much dropped from there. So he was gay. He was pretty evident gay right from the start. He had that fail crack with the guy who gave the green pies, and that was it. It floundered and went nowhere from there. As a character, he really didn't do anything other than drive the van.
Can I sort of jump back to it? So he's gay. He goes to a diner. He tries to pick up the what do you call it? The wait staff. What do you call
the guy who served the key lime pie.
Yeah, the guy who served the pie. Metaphor. And a black couple come in, and the guy who serves the pie is just massively racist. He goes, "I'm not going to serve you. Fuck off. Don't sit down. I'm not going to serve you." And then the Richard Jenkins character just goes, "You don't have to behave like that." And I think you've probably come to this diner for a while, been seeing this guy for a while. You've never seen any of that happen, and it's again that sort of like that fucking mentality of nothing exists until it happens on the page for the first time. And you would have thought, well, that probably would have been shown. You don't. I guess it was meant to show that Richard Jenkins' character is sympathetic and all that sort of stuff.
I think it's also meant to be a commentary moment for the fact that in the 60s, segregation still existed, racism was rife, and gays were persecuted. We all fucking know that. I don't know what this actually did to
that's what I'm saying.
To validate any of that or apologise for it or whatever it was meant to be. It was just a moment to say, you know what, 40, 50 years ago, things are fucked. We've moved on from there.
Really, the Richard Jenkins character only exists to interpret the Sally Hawkins character's sign language so they can move story along. That's the only reason he's there. He's there, he reads the sign language.
But then we had fucking subtitles for every time she signed.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of she was furthering the plot for him. If he wasn't there, how would she further the plot for the fucking sake of the audience? They wouldn't know.
Subtitle.
Oh, who should she be talking to?
Well, she'd be just signing away to the mirror. And then the words come up. We're informed. That was the whole point of the exercise.
But I'm just saying that he's there.
He's a sounding board. Yes. Well, without being a sounding board.
That's right. He's there.
He's a muting board.
He's a sounding board just so they can push the story along because she needs someone to talk to push his story further forward. He doesn't actually do anything until probably the end. He has like a little bit of a fucking moment, but again, it's nothing major, needed to be in the story. Yeah, it's that whole thing of like there's a lot of characters just sort of running around doing fucking nothing for the sake of having these pieces in place for this schlock movie about a woman who falls for a swamp monster.
Yeah, well, it happens a lot. I mean, it's I've got an aunt that had the same thing happen to her. She fell in love with a goldfish. And we never saw her again. I'm assuming that she wrote down on a calendar one day that the rain was coming and I'll be taking the goldfish to the dock.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some should have been some neon signs to point there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that just on the gay artist guy for a moment, there was that whole thing again. I guess because it was meant to be almost a silent persecution, or we're meant to assume he's been persecuted for being gay because he lost his job at the advertising agency. And he kept going back to that guy with the ball gold glasses, and he's beaten down each and every time. And that was it, dried up. There was nothing that actually happened out of any of that. And you think, well, why was that even on the screen?
That's again
we know he's a persecuted guy. I mean, gays were persecuted back then. Do we need it?
But that's like his infatuation with the diner guy and with the doctor's relationship with the Russian agents. These things didn't really go anywhere. They didn't need to be there. They might have had like some minor, payoff, but they really weren't integral to the story. If you remove them, no one would have given a shit. No one would have noticed.
No, it's just sign of the times commentary type things. Yeah, well, look, I don't know whether people actually need to be reminded of that at such a granular level about how fucking bad things used to be. And the things aren't great now, but they were a hell of a lot worse. But there was no sense of it being a hell of a lot worse. It was just subtle reminders, not even subtle, but just reminders of these, that this is the times that used to be.
But that's again, I mean, if you look at it from a storytelling point of view, the character should have an arc, where they begin, where they end. So the Richard Jenkins character, he began as a unemployed gay artist who was aspiring to try and get some work and had an infatuation with this diner guy, and at the end of it, same person. But he now has some hair because the swamp creature touched him and suddenly his hair grew back. Yeah. And that was his whole arc. He had nothing. There was nothing, it would have been something like, just totally, brainstorm off the top of my head. It would have been different if he was like, for example, agoraphobic, who refused to leave his fucking house, and that's why she was living with him to care for him while she was on the job and all that sort of shit. And she was trying to get him out back into the world, and he was refusing. He was scared. They bring the lizard there. He makes a bit of a connection with a fucking a similar, type outsider creature. She tries to fucking help the creature away at the end. She gets caught, and he comes to save her. So he leaves his place. He overcomes his agoraphobia. He rejoins the world for a greater good and tries to help his friend. And that would be an arc to me. That would be a payoff. It'd be like he's done something that's totally reversed where we met him. But none of that sort of shit, and again, that's just totally off the top of my head. None of that sort of shit happened. Similar with the doctor with the fucking Russian, connections, that had no payoff. It would have been better if he was selling information to the Russians and he meets this fucking creature and he discovers this nobility in this creature, this intelligence in this creature, and he says, fuck, I'm not going to sell this out because this deserves to live. It doesn't deserve to be fucking...
That was sort of alluded to.
But it didn't really get... But like, he never had the contrary attitude. It was sort of like, he's approached, this is what you fucking, we want this creature and all this shit. And he was just sort of, going, no, okay, not at the moment. It would have been better if they showed us the start. He was just non-merciful, or as a mercenary. Give me money. And then he has this reversal of attitude. I'm not going to do this because I recognize the intelligence of this creature. And again, I am doing something for nobility of life and all that sort of stuff. And it's a reverse of what he was doing previously. So the character has an arc. He learns, fuck, it's not all about money. It's also about respecting life and all that sort of shit. He did have that respecting life thing, but that was the way he was constantly. So there was no change in that fucking character. So it just sort of went like that the whole movie. It really seemed that no one was going, and even the main character, Sally Horgan's character, she had no real change. She was an outsider, and she's remained an outsider, except one who bangs swamp creatures. And again, it's like, there's any growth in the character? No. There was any change? No. It was just that she decided, I'm going to breed this swamp creature because the movie tells me there's a montage where I connect with the creature, because I bring in boiled eggs. It's like, well, fuck that. That doesn't actually show any growth in anything other than you're telling us, okay, 2 minutes ago, him and she and the swamp monster didn't know each other, and now they know each other, and he trusts her. It's like, well, fuck off. There's no... That wasn't earned. That development wasn't earned. It was just, you told us that was the way it was going to be. Again, you go back to E.T., they have that thing where he really needs to earn E.T.'s trust. I mean, it only happens over a few minutes. He fucking gives him M&M, sorry. He gives him M&Ms, he lures him up into the house and all that sort of shit. And they develop a rapport, and it grows gradually. And, he...
There's also the establishment of a bond between them, and that sort of codependency up to the point where it's blatantly they're connected.
Yeah, but you see that development. You really see that sort of growth in it. And in E.T., it's great too, because you have a family that's... the father's left. So they've had a father figure and lots of...
That's classic
Spielberg, yeah. And you see the growth in the characters from where they begin to where they end up. And again, you have an arc. You really fucking have something for all the characters.
And there's stakes as well. So. Yeah, like when E.T.'s fading to white and Elliot's dying as well, there's a bond there that obviously you've got to have to save both to save both. As stupid as that sounds. In this, there was always that hinting that he's losing his scales, obviously. Sitting in some water isn't enough. There should be
water.
Some other...
They have put salt in the water.
Because the Amazon's rife with salt water.
It's not just iodized salt water.
It's symbolic, I guess. But there was just no sort of sense of state there with the creature. That it would look like it was suffering one moment, and then it was okay the next. It was happily eating the cat. It was happily standing in the cinema. It was happily standing at the window watching the rain. Whereas half an hour before film time or a day before or whatever, it was struggling because it didn't have enough table salt in its bath. It's just that whole... There's got to be some rules, I guess, that this creature must survive by, that you can understand, that you can empathise, or not empathise, but I suppose, again, associate with why it's in peril.
I mean, you look at this creature. I mean, seriously, I mean, the fucking creature's in prison, she frees it, so you got an attractive woman who frees it and she boinks him. He's fucking better off than me. And so, it's like, I'm looking at this creature going, well, put me in his shoes, I'll be happy, fuck. So you got some flaky skin, alright, I'll fuck, put on some Sorbeline cream, you'll be fine. But no, it's this, there's no stakes in these a lot of movies nowadays. It's to the point, it's infuriating because you're watching it, characters are doing stuff that goes nowhere. You're being told there's stakes. You're not actually being asked to invest in it. You're not being led to the investment of stakes like E.T. You just watch E.T. and you get drawn into the movie and you understand what's going on. In this one, you've just been told, oh look, his skin's flaky, so there's stakes. He could fucking, I don't know. I didn't know what the next stage for him was. Just lose more skin. Who knows? You've been told there's stakes, and then at some point someone goes, well, we've got to do this, and that's what they've got to do, and that's where they go to next. And there's no causal link between what came before and what goes next. It's just, this is the next step, because we're 80 minutes into the movie, and now he needs to escape. So let's fucking push the plot forward to the escape phase. It really gets frustrating. As someone who loves movies, that you watch these fucking things, and you're going, geez, this one, I didn't think was that far off. Could have been a really good movie, but it just wasn't structured that well. And it's probably getting rave reviews at the moment because compared to shit like DC Universe is releasing and Disney with Star Wars, it looks fucking like a master. It looks complex, but it's not. It's just a really. I mean, I go back to actually a movie, War Horse by Steven Spielberg. I don't know if you ever saw it. It was about fucking 10 years ago. About a fucking horse that gets contributed into the war effort, and Spielberg makes you feel so much fucking sympathy for that horse and the shit it needs to go through, and that you wish it gets out of there. And he does it well because he shows us the shit it goes through, shows us the stakes, and it fucking shows us what's going on from a perspective of a horse who has no control over its own destiny.
And no dialogue.
Yeah, no dialogue. It doesn't need to talk to fucking some gay artist that it's living with in the stable. And, it's, by Spielberg standards, it's just a solid movie. It's not like one of these brilliant movies or anything. But it's a good, entertaining 2 hours. And you really get invested in it because it's just structured well. These movies now are just, I don't know, I'm really lose hope. Whenever I watch a movie now, if it's a blockbuster, a superhero movie, a fucking Star Trek movie, a Star Wars movie, I really have no hope whatsoever that it's going to be a competently directed movie. If it's a sort of just something like Molly's Game or like that, which is just a biopic piece or something that's just a straight story, I have a lot more hope, and I can feel someone hasn't made this with the intention of trying to earn $800 million at the box office. So they might have put a lot more care into this rather than just relying on fucking beats and paint by numbers storytelling.
Look, I'm going to be exceptionally curious about how this is treated by the Oscar fraternity. I think in light of will this come out technically last year or this year, 2018?
That's came out last year.
So it'll slot into the next lot of Oscar noms, blah, blah, blah. I think probably compared to what it's had released in that period, I think it'll do exceptionally well. Look, it tried to be different. And then I think, we lament how same Hollywood's become. You probably should be applauding something like this. The execution was probably lacking.
That's the problem.
Trying's just not enough.
Yeah, there's Darkest Hour, Molly's Game. I sort of mentioned those few movies. Enjoy them. You're just going to tell a story. You're not going after the fucking superhero sci-fi franchise reboot, comic book, whatever. Movie. That's great, but you still need to do them well. And like this on the execution, it wasn't offensive. Like I was thinking, there was a few bits where just going, really, there's no way that would happen. That doesn't make sense. It's not logical. These characters aren't moving. It was just like a lot of little things that was just off in so many little things that it didn't amount to some, gross abuse like Last Jedi. But it was like, that pretty early on, it sort of felt like this is going to stay at this level. But I say, did you have a jump off point with this movie?
Not like a full on jump off. I mean, the thing is, I guess the foreshadowing probably had me stepping off, simply because it's like I have one foot out. Because if you don't give me some sort of complete, you've been perfied, I'm going to be a little bit annoyed. Looking back now, that's probably my jump off point where, I've got the scars on my neck. I was abandoned by a river. The fact that there was no reversal to that, that's probably where I would have leapt off, even though now I'm confidently saying that's where I left. But at the time, I was not jumping off, if that makes sense. Yeah, 1 foot out of the car, running along, hopping along.
1 foot out of the bathtub.
That's it.
Yeah, for me, it was just really first time she went and met the creature. She laid an egg down, and she was just very docile and trusting. And I don't know if there was meant to be a sense that this is where she belongs, accept that she's going to do this. I mean, if that is, again, it doesn't work because if that's where she's beginning, then that's where she ended. So there's no real arc for the character. But just that she would go meet the swamp creature with the egg. She doesn't know at this point it's not vicious. I mean, She met it.
Well,
that was after it ate 2 fingers.
She knows it ate, yeah.
Yeah, so...
But it spat him out.
Yeah, spat him out. So I'm just going to go sit by it and lay an egg there, and I'll be cool. There'll be no problem. I'll just lay an egg there, and in the montage, I'll keep coming back, and with sign language, we will communicate and develop it. And that just seemed really unreasonable to me in terms of the way that developed. So again, in terms of, just totally hypothetical, because at the start, they show they're willing the creature in through a tank, or in a tank. All the staff are in there, the cleaners are in there. If the fucking thing just, for example, wasn't in an enclosed tank, it was like in an open tank and it started attacking scientists or whatever, and it got to her and it let her go. Like, you just sort of,
grabs.
Yeah, it grabs, but I'm not going to kill her. And she goes, well, fuck it, trust me, and there's something I can work with. So I'll look at that and go, well, okay, I can understand now why. Because you've seen it's vicious toward other things, like to oppressors, but to you, it's made a connection. So I can understand why you would try to make a relationship back. I don't understand why you would try to make a relationship with something which is eating 2 fingers of someone. The guy might be a prick, but still, to me, that would they got it in the fucking chains and all that, and it's bitten 2 fingers off someone. That to me suggests, look, it's pretty vicious. So, or can be vicious. So just stay away. There's no reason you should be trusting that it's going to fucking like your attentions. I mean, it's seriously up there with Prometheus when the guy pats the fucking snake. Like, yeah, it's a snake in the water. I'll do that today, If we just walked out to fucking like some swamp and there was a snake on the bank, I just pat. Oh, look, spook a snake. Let me just pat that.
That's the same thing in the sequel where you just arrive on an alien planet, you just walk out with any sort of...
Yeah, there's all these spores and nothing you're worried about. Yeah. Any final thoughts on The Shape of Shit?
Look, I think I've seen it. I've seen it once. I think that's enough.
Yep. I think I wish Guillermo del Toro did the 18 Hobbit movies that came out instead.
That would have been.
Apparently, this is like a passion project for him, and he made this instead of Pacific 2,
which is
Pacific Rim 2, Rim Pacifics 2. Yeah, well, I remember we saw Pacific Rim, and we both fell asleep in the cinema. So it sort of tells you about the fucking movie.
However, on a re-watch, I didn't think it was that bad.
Please stay awake.
I stayed awake.
On the re-watch, it's actually just a total aside, and maybe we should actually talk about this one day. It's amazing when I used to see movies when I was growing up as a child in the 80s. I would watch those fucking things again and again and again. And even as I grew older, I'd watch them again, talking about stuff like Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Indiana Jones. Like, even things like Last Starfighter, like lesser caliber movies and all that. I watched them several fucking times. Really enjoyed them. Mad Max and all that. So many movies I watch nowadays, and I just have no function to go back and watch it again.
There's a saturation of content though these days. But yeah, maybe we can talk about that another time.
Yep. It's a story for another time. Anyway, that's it from us. I am Sly.
And I am Green, phasing into Red Spook.
And I don't know, maybe one day we'll be back with the Chief. If you've missed him, leave a comment. If you haven't, leave a comment. Subscribe if you like what you're hearing, and if you don't, subscribe and maybe you'll like it one day.
And if you're really not sure about us, just bring a ball dig over.
Yep, and subscribe. Alright, see you later.
Thanks.